Greetings and welcome to another episode of the U Talk Shows, where today I have burnt my nuggets. Horst, over to you. What are we talking about?
Why, there ought to be a law against nuggets that can burn.
Yes, chicken nuggets burning
So,
is it's terrible.
it's a travesty. Absolute miscarriage of justice. Possibly also a miscarriage of the nuggets, but I digress. So, yesterday we discussed how laws are made, and we determined that technically laws are made as part of the democratic process, but also technically they're frequently not. And that despite the fact that basically all laws are acts of parliament, there are many laws that are not acts of parliament, and in fact never had anything to do with parliament. So, now that that absolutely clear as mud legal situation is sorted, what happens when a law becomes a law? How are laws enacted and enforced? Now, um, I don't
I
think there's
believe
any really such thing as a grown adult who hasn't had an interaction with the police, whether that be positive or negative. And the police are, of course, the most obvious arm of how laws are enacted and enforced. If if suddenly a law is made stating that it is illegal to walk while wearing socks and sandals, I wish, then obviously the police will be issuing infringement notices to people who are walking while wearing socks and sandals. And that is the direct way in which that law is enacted and enforced. But there's more to it than that. Kyle?
Wait, why are we switching to me? You're the
Oh,
one who
you
knows
said
this
I
stuff better than me.
believe?
Oh yeah, I was just what was I gonna say? I was trying not to interrupt you again, and I think I might have forgotten.
Rip.
Yeah,
Sorry.
rip my thought. No, it's all right. Like I made the choice to just not interrupt you because I really should not do that as much. Right. Okay, so I think I was gonna say that I believe we slightly covered this in the where we talked about the separation of powers.
Mm-hmm.
Essentially, the laws are kind of enacted and enforced by bureaucracies, and I guess the logistics of it is sorted out by the executive branch. Even if the logistics that they sort out is more just here's the system, and we're going to hire people to run that system. Correct?
Yep, I think this is where we get back to our old friends, the delegated powers.
Because
Um, it's
even
even more
something as simple as a
interesting.
police officer has a they have delegated powers and also responsibilities.
Kind of, yes. It's not quite the same, but yes, a police officer has what you would call a broad mandate to enforce the law in a way that benefits society, which
Mm.
is why you will sometimes see police officers turning a blind eye to things that are technically crimes but don't actually really cause a problem.
Yeah.
Um, for instance, jaywalking is a good example. Sometimes the police will set themselves up across from Town Hall Station near the QVB, and they will start issuing infringement notices to people who are walking across the road when there's a small break in traffic. You can usually tell that it's the revenue raising time of year. At many other times, you can walk across the road while not at the lights, right in full view of a police officer, and they will use their judgment. They will see that you do not pose a threat to public safety, you do not pose a threat to yourself. And while what you've just done is technically a crime, it is not something that it is in the interest of the state to enforce.
Hmm.
So
Reasons
yes,
for
there,
that
there
can vary, but essentially, generally, it's just either your actions don't threaten the safety of anyone or the stability of anything. Essentially,
hmm.
if it's a victimless crime, they might turn a blind eye. Um,
I mean, many who've been through the many who've had to deal with criminal justice, we're going to get dark for a moment here, folks. Statistically speaking, a hell of a lot of people have been sexually assaulted. Statistically speaking, a hell of a lot of people who have committed sexual assault have faced precisely zero legal repercussions for their actions.
Mm.
It is a notoriously difficult crime to prosecute, and even with an absolutely bulletproof case, the police often don't do it. So I'm going to make the argument here that even crimes with a very well-defined victim and a very well-defined social harm are frequently overlooked for one reason or another.
Mm.
That got darker than I was hoping for today.
Yeah. Well, I mean, at that point, we're getting into our favorite C word, corruption, but less
No, that's
of
not
the
corruption.
political
That's just
variety.
being
Oh,
depressed.
okay.
Like, corruption is not the reason that sexual assault survivors do not get justice. The reasons are far more complicated than that, and they can be, you're out at night in a nightclub in a short dress. I mean, obviously sexual assault is never right, but you're going to get ripped to shreds in the courtroom, and we are not able to prosecute it. And sometimes it's,
Yeah.
sure, yeah, we believe you, love, we'll call you back, and then they never do.
Mm.
Like,
Yeah. Although,
there are
I
a lot
mean,
of things that can go wrong.
like the thing is, though, I know of several cases that in which essentially the perpetrator was friends with the local police, or they had, essentially, they had a certain kind of relationship that involved money. We're getting into sort of the organized crime territory, but essentially, that's why I brought up the corruption, but
Corruption.
more of the corruption of law enforcement rather than corruption of the political system. And then there's certain other crimes that have actually been committed because of such corruption. But that's a
Yep.
whole other story.
My brain is going, murder of Juanita Nilsson.
Why
Though
does that
it's
name
been,
sound familiar? Was that the journalist who went into a
yeah,
nightclub?
the journalist in King's Cross in the 70s.
Yeah. Blonde hair, kind of puffy in that typical 60s, 70s style. I think blonde hair. Might have been Auburn, I can't remember. But yeah, no, there's
No,
that.
it was King's
Then there's
Cross, not
also
Auburn.
no, I mean auburn hair, that sort of brown. Oh, okay, you were making a joke and it just flew right over my head. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. There are a lot of reasons where there are a lot of cases where justice is not done for one reason or another.
Yeah.
But ideally, we want to go back to our. We
Yes,
have
how are laws
decided by an act of
enacted and
parliament that
enforced?
murder is bad.
Hmm.
So, interestingly enough, how a law is enacted frequently starts before the law is a law. As you said, some laws are basically it's a done deal. And so you will frequently see advertising campaigns that say, the law is about to change. This thing, which was previously done in this way, is now being done in a different way. And in order to remain compliant with the law by this date, you will need to be doing things in the new and different way.
Hmm. Kind of like the proposed law on single-use plastics.
Yes.
To ban single-use plastics, you'd have to find some other way of packaging things that didn't involve single-use plastics, and they give like a certain time frame to put that into effect. Quite a lot of
Yes.
laws actually are done that way. Particularly laws relating mostly like businesses and the like. But a great many laws are essentially, we've created this law, it will take effect by this time.
Mhm.
It's up to businesses or individuals to figure out how to comply with that law, and will give you a set amount of time to figure that out.
Yes, but that is part of the process of enacting and enforcing the law, and it's one that often gets overlooked. Because the first thing you have to do when a new law takes effect is you have to make sure that people are actually aware of the law. Because while in crimes of strict liability, so like it doesn't matter whether you thought you were doing the wrong thing. It matters that you did the wrong thing. Ignorance of the law is not a defense. Whereas that only works so long as everyone has a fair chance to know that this is now the law.
Yeah.
Like after that, you will usually have government task forces set up, which are tracking compliance in the case of laws affecting businesses. They may
the
do
Australian
limited
Taxation
polling or
Office.
surveys. Yeah.
Like the
They may do
Australian
limited
Taxation
polling or
Office, you know.
surveys to track awareness of the law and whether people think it's a good idea. This is the side of the law that nobody thinks about because it's really boring. Like everyone wants the dunk dunk law and order noises and the dramatic car chases and the bad guys being led away in manacles. That's the glamorous side of the law. That is, yeah, we did it. We caught the bad guys. But there are a lot of smaller laws that aren't about what is right or wrong, but they are about how a nation or a state functions.
Yeah.
And all that's honestly boring. It's not sexy.
Yeah, I'll even say this because I think it was like the early to late 90s, like there was this period where on every TV channel there was a show about lawyers essentially practicing law. But even in those shows, which there are easily like a dozen of them, but even in those shows, it wasn't really about law the whole time. It was, in fact, most of the show wasn't about law, but it was about like the characters within the show, because the law itself, it wasn't
was
really
a framing
something.
Device.
Yeah, it was not really something that's entertaining. It's not something that's that captures the imagination. It is very boring stuff. It takes a certain
and
kind
one
of mind
murder
to
is
pay
not
attention
fundamentally different from another murder. Like one theft is not fundamentally different from another theft. These are the narrative devices that we use to tell stories about ourselves as people. I grew up on Law and Order, okay? Jerry Orbach is still, for some reason, a comforting sight to me. He is, of course, now long deceased.
Rip.
But we sort of assume that the law is something that is there and that it protects us, and that the people who run afoul of the law must surely get what is coming to them. But the reality of the matter is that often running afoul of the law is a matter of being stupid or unlucky or not sufficiently educated on the substance of the law, or a combination of all three. It's far more common to break the law by spitting on the sidewalk or by walking across the street against the lights than it is to see a crime that truly shakes one.
Yeah, it's a lot more mundane, but also messy at the same time. And that's that's most of what the law covers. It's not really easy to make that appealing to watch and learn about.
Yes, ultimately, laws are enacted and enforced by awareness first, by educating the public, and then by charging the wheels of government, the government bureaucracy, with tracking compliance in the event of things being criminalized or decriminalized. The enforcement sits with peace officers, which are usually the state police or the Australian Federal Police. But in certain settings may also involve, for instance, the Australian Defence Force military police.
You're also forgetting
And God help you
the
if you run afoul
arbites
of those guys.
well, you're also forgetting the arbites in the Imperium.
Please, we're not that desperate yet. Our future is grim and dark, but there is still the hope of bringing a light to it.
Yeah, it's. I don't know why, but I'm just like super proud of that joke. It's just.
It was solid.
You know, yeah, you know that
It was solid, like the thunk of a towel bouncing off a Space Marine's power armor.
Oh, a man after my own heart. but it's kind of that whole meme video thing, which is like, this is what your favorite one of these says about you. You know that part where it's like, no way, you know this one? Can we be friends? I feel like the arbites are that. I feel like that's what they are.
In fairness, it's like the Law and Order thing. Like we don't have TV. Well, I mean, up until very recently, we didn't have TV dramas that were set inside a lawyer's office. Like we have The Lincoln Lawyer coming out of the US, which I've just watched and I really enjoyed. But even there, the drama isn't about like figuring out what the law means. The drama is about the fact that someone's trying to kill this guy while he's trying to repair his relationship with his daughter and ex-wife.
Yeah, it's, as a like I said earlier, it's very much about the characters, not the not everything else,
like
not the law.
With Suits, half the drama was about the fact that this guy was practicing law while not actually being a lawyer. He was committing this relatively large crime for the majority part of the series, and that was the drama. It was, will he be found out, won't he? The actual law was honestly kind of boring.
Honestly, I feel like in that story you could really cover the law. It's just like, and you could put the drama as like, can he properly do this job? That's where the drama could have been, and you could have demonstrated him in like kind of a cool way, like essentially practicing law and actually taught people about the law, kind of like the show House, where Dr. House, like he actually like speaks in real medical terms.
Oh yes.
Yeah,
House is really good
like
for zebras. The cases that House sees, a practicing physician might see once in a lifetime if they're very unfortunate. But again, when you are the best that money can buy, people don't bother you with boring stuff. So
yeah,
that in itself is kind of interesting.
And it's kind of like being a good lawyer.
Though I will take my cheap shot at Suits. Suits was Meghan Markle's first outing as an arrogant, uppity twit with ideas above her station, and she nailed it. In much the same way as she is currently nailing in real life.
Fair enough.
Now there's your low-hanging fruit.
Yes. All right. Well, with that, we have run out of time, so we'll end it there.
Yeah.
Thank you for
watching,
watching, everyone.
The law is boring, but the law is important.
Yes.
And hopefully now you all can understand why.
Yes. And I guess pay a little more attention to it as well. Thank you again for watching, and hope you have a great day, night, wherever you are, whatever you're doing.
Take care, y'all.